The moon hung low over the prairie, like a heavy copper medallion someone had pinned to the sky and then forgotten. On the Blue Canyon Ranch something is always rustling, whistling, muttering, coyotes in the gullies, owls in the empty grain bins, the old weather vane on the barn roof coughing out rusty sobs whenever the breeze shifts. But tonight everything seemed to hold its breath. Not even the tall grass along the fence moved. A bead of moonlight clung to each blade like a glass tear. I ran the rubber currycomb down Orion's neck one last time, and felt the slightest tremor, as he accepted the massage. His skin was warm and alive, smelling of summer dust and hay. I ruffled the strands of his mane, so they wouldn't mat by morning, and remembered how tiny he had been when father and I found the orphaned foal by the irrigation canal. Back then it felt like a miracle that he survived, yet now every motion carried the strength of a fresh drill shaft hidden beneath the plain. Orion snorted, bumped my forehead with his own as if to ask, "Are we done?" I smiled, stowed the brush in the wooden locker, and picked up the bucket of carrot pieces. He always waited for this late-night snack, absurdly disciplined, as though counting the minutes. "Quiet now," I whispered. Sheriff Howell complained again, "He can hear the stable clear out on the highway." He tossed his head like a boy told to behave at a church fair, and gently took the carrot with his lips. Click, click in the dark, his teeth catching the sweet core, the sound echoing down the empty stall corridor. I latched the side gate of the stall with the heavy bar, click, then the second slide bolt, click. Just as father taught, 2 locks, 2 chances the horse wakes up at home. I paced 3 steps toward the switch, but on the 3rd step I stopped. Cold sweat beaded on my skin for no reason, noiselessly. To the left, in the darkness, I felt a stare. Not human, a beast's, focused, insistent. Orion raised his head, ears pivoting the same way. We both looked into the void, yet at the far end of the corridor the night felt thicker than it should. I forced myself to blink, wipe away the illusion. I flicked the switch, the bulb above the stall flashed, then died just as sharply. Burned out. Of course. I cursed under my breath, found the headlamp in my pocket, checked the battery, green light, charged. Before I could click it on, a sound reached me, a light, almost silken tap of boards, as if someone touched the outside gates. Impossible. I was there an hour ago. I'd checked the chain myself. Every hook, every hasp on the ranch lives in my head like roots in an inner compass. Father said, a ranch is held together not by boards, but by memory. My hand dropped to the holster, yet the revolver had rested at home in a sink drawer ever since that spring when Lauren and I nearly shot the coyotes, and ourselves. Since then I'd trusted a loud voice and a wooden stake. Animals fear noise, people fear resolve. But the night was too quiet for resolve to sound convincing. I clicked on the lamp. The beam speared the tunnel-like hallway, caught motes dancing in my breath. Orion lowered his head, as if about to lie down, something he never did when I was present. "Easy, boy," I whispered, stroking his forehead through the grill. That was when I saw the iron pin in the latch ring missing. The chain dangled, both ends clean, as if eased apart with pliers. I remembered snapping the carabiner shut. The boards of the gate quivered. It felt like an unseen child rocked the panel back and forth, testing the sound. I stepped from the corridor, silent. Gravel crunched under my boot, an irritating signal to anyone hiding. Let them hear, let them know I'm coming. The lamp's edge sliced the moon-soaked darkness. Beyond the fence the scorched flat lay childish quiet, not even the cicadas sang. The gate swung wider, moonlight sliding along a metal shaft, the shaft that wasn't there. My fingers skimmed the top rail and felt the emptiness. My heart stabbed. Orion. The name surfaced before the thought. I stepped past the panel. The beam shot ahead, and stopped at a hoof print. Large, heavy, still wet on the dust. Beside it a boot track, broad toe, deeper than my heel. Human and horse walking side by side. Orion! I yelled. My voice ran across the flats, drowned in grass. No whinny, no shuffle, no answering ring of shoe on stone. Fear rose from my gut, swallowed the night coffee, the day's fatigue, the memory of last summer when everything was still whole. I cranked the beam long range, found the path toward the cut line of darkening willows where father once chopped a hunter's trail, overgrown now with thorny indigo. Don't go alone, Lauren's voice came back. We still spoke then, eating roasted corn on the porch, arguing whose Orion would be if father. Suddenly I shoved the memory away. It struck my temples. First step beyond the gate. A chill jabbed my back. Second step, the ground turned viscous, soul sticking to native soil, urging, don't. But I took the third, and the skyline shifted, the moon slipped behind a cloud, the air thickened like water. A current of goose flesh ran my spine. A hiss rustled to the side, thin as a crack in a wall. I swung the beam, an orange lead rope tip dangled from a bush, frayed and jagged. I knew the braided pattern, Orion's halter. As if he'd left me a sign. Or someone had, for me. I lifted the rope, brought it to my face, smelled fresh horse sweat, work scent, mine. It happened moments ago. The forest stirred again, wind exhaled, and from the highest branches slipped the scent. Someone whispered my name, not shouted, whispered. I turned, emptiness. Yet living, watchful emptiness. I looked back across the plain and saw a distant yellow point, the faint wink of a kerosene lamp inside the old hunter's cabin, long certified abandoned. Father once said, if a light shows in that cabin at night, run home, Clara. It means old debts have come for interest. We laughed then, around the fire, it sounded like a camp tale. But my knee buckled now, blood draining from my arms. I stroked the ridged body of the lamp, habit, like chambering around. Remembered Orion, his warm breath, the carrots, the eyes that always said, I won't go without you. But he'd gone. No, he'd been taken. And someone waited in that cabin for me to find them, right now, when the wind finally moved after hours, creaking through brush like a massive door opening on the past. I drew a breath, tasting the moon's metallic dust, and stepped toward the trees. The light bounced off a wet leaf like a campfire flare, and in that reflection I glimpsed my eyes, strange, unfamiliar, as though they already knew a truth my heart hadn't caught up to. The wind stopped, and shoved again, a cold palm between my shoulders. I went on. The first thing my lungs felt when I stepped beneath the veil of willows was the sweet smell of damp bark mixed with the bitterness of rotted leaves. The forest seemed to shut the door behind me willingly, swallowing the weak moonlight, and leaving only the narrow blade of the flashlight trembling in my hand. A hoof print. I caught each fresh mark as if they were notes in a score, the heavy half-circle of a forehoof, then a hind print, set a little aside, the typical step Orion took when he shifted weight, listening for a command. A boot print. Side by side, deeper than my own, no smaller than a size 12. The man walked unhurriedly yet surely, not afraid of being heard, perhaps knowing there was no one to listen. The path wound like a thread of memory. In every gap of the canopy the moon threw a short flash, and each time I saw, hoof, boot, another pair of hoof marks. Yes, twin, smaller imprints of a deer, but they veered toward the creek. So the wild ones had not betrayed the intruder. The forest was on his side. I bent over one especially clear print, running a finger across the wet earth. The clay had not yet cracked dry, less than an hour old. Frighteningly close. A tight knot cinched inside my chest, one neither breath nor prayer could loosen. I remembered September 5 years ago, the day Father drove Rowan Dill out of the barn. I never understood for what. I only heard the angry words, you sold outsiders the right to tap our aquifer, words heavy as stones. Rowan left, the stall door swinging. Father later said, some doors must be shut for good. But for good does not exist if doors possess memory. The flashlight lit the trunk of an old elm. On the bark, a round burned brand, the Latin letter H with a broken crossbar. The Hayes Ranch brand. Father's mark. Someone had pressed it here on purpose, so I would notice, a direct invitation. Blood rushed to my face. The mark was fresh, resin still glistened amber. For an instant I thought I heard faint crackling, as if the hot iron had just been lifted. I touched the symbol with my fingertips, warm. Very recent. 10 steps farther the trail narrowed and willow branches bowed so low I had to duck. Under that leaf tent lay a broken piece of metal bit. I knew the cold dark shine at once, Sam Weller's special forge work, the village smith. We ordered it when Orion grew and needed stronger tack. The bit had been snipped through, as by bolt cutters. Who would risk that unless the horse would follow willingly? So Orion trusted, or that trust had been forced on him. A faint tremor of earth rose. I froze. Far off, from the southern fields, rolled a dull echo, like a heavy load dropping onto wooden planks. Maybe the storm playing in the braces of the old elevator. Or someone hurrying to cover tracks. I needed air. I switched off the lamp, let my eyes adjust. Darkness wasn't total. The moon found a slit, and drew a silver ribbon across the path. In that light the tracks gleamed with moisture. I knelt on one knee and closed my eyes, allowing myself the luxury of memory. Lauren. A sister with whom we built secret lean-tos on this very slope, believing we hid from all the world's grief. After Mother's funeral she turned foreign, as if sorrow registered her at another orbit, and on the day of the will's reading she vanished entirely. We hadn't quarreled, we simply stopped speaking. I recalled her laugh, like the creak of fresh boards, a bit rough, yet bright. I heard it now, muffled by wind, like the echo of old film, that frightened me more than the forest's rustles. If Lauren was here, she'd chosen night to say what daylight dared not. I clicked the lamp back on. The beam struck the crowns, and there, between two trunks, flicked something white, a strip of cloth. I raised my hand. The fabric hung from a twig, coarse cotton, dust-soaked, with hurried black paint, "Come home." The letters were sloppy, torn, as if written in haste. Very funny, I breathed, though a lump sat in my throat. Someone thought memory could be worked like a signboard. Shadows stirred in the distance. I cut the light and crouched. The forest breathed heavily like an old beast. For a moment I thought I saw movement, broad shoulders, a hand adjusting a hat. The outline dissolved, leaving only a sigh of branches. I rose, stepping softly. The track bent, led to the old creek now long shallow. Here mica in the clay-mirrored moonlight, making prints stand sharper. Suddenly Orion's trail stopped, and the boots became two pairs. One large, and beside it a neater one with a narrow toe, left by a woman's shoe. I needed truth, but it scraped the heart like raw sand beneath a nail. Two people, one horse. Orion might have been led between them. I had underestimated the danger. Deeper, where the reeds stirred, I heard every sound at once, drip of water from a leaf, crack of a distant twig, a light strike of horseshoe on stone, echoing as from a well. Horseshoes. I no longer saw hooves, but I heard them. Another 50 yards and at last I saw a light. Dim, amber, like from an old kerosene lamp, trembling on a slope where no dwelling should be. Yet I knew the hunter's cabin stood there, abandoned since Father hung a heavy lock on its door. The light died, for a split second, and flared again. Someone moved inside. Sweat rolled between my shoulder blades. My legs went numb. The body understood that a step toward the cabin was a step past the point of no return. But stopping was impossible. Orion was there somewhere. And maybe Lauren. I squeezed the broken bit still in my hand, the cold steel felt hot, as if it had drunk my fear. I tucked it behind my belt, just in case. Less than 50 steps remained. The forest drew tight around me, branches towered like dark columns. Far off a crow croaked hoarsely, the note breaking mid-call like an unfinished sentence. Every step was now a drilled motion, heel-toe, weight on the inner arch, breathing shallow. I heard blood in my ears and it beat the rhythm, hoof-boot, hoof-boot. It was clear, if I misstepped I'd answer for more than myself. Earth, water, and air here remembered father. And memory can guard, or judge. I reached a low rise, the cabin stood fully revealed. The roof sagged like a burdened shoulder, yet the window glowed softly like the home of childhood when you return with a Christmas tree. One could almost forget a stranger's will hid inside. I dropped to my knees in the brush, counting figures. One shadow moved inside. No sign of Orion, perhaps behind a wall. For an instant I caught the edge of his menore, a flash of amber, or I imagined it. I had to wait. I drew a deep breath, the smell of rotten moss stabbed my nose, recalling childhood. I wanted to be back on the porch, a mug of cocoa warm in my hands, but the past never changes its roots, it walks to you if you won't walk to it. Just then a twig snapped behind me, sharp, quick, like a latch flicking. I wheeled, lighted the bushes. Empty. Yet the feeling of a stare, the very one from the stall corridor, returned, 10 times stronger. Behind me the cabin went blind again, the lamp went out. The woods swallowed the glow, as though it had never existed. I was alone in a space where every sound was a herald. Another second, the lamp blazed anew, brighter now, as if whoever was inside knew exactly I was there and meant to underscore it. I flattened to the ground. My heart pounded wild, breath searing dry. I understood, beyond this lay a talk that could not be postponed till morning. Still I waited, at least 3 heartbeats, to recall father's face. Dad, tell me what choice you made if your mark burns on trees while your daughter crawls toward darkness. The forest answered only with the whisper of grass. I exhaled and on soft knees I crept toward the door. The cabin door hung on one hinge like a dislocated bone. I pressed my shoulder to the rough boards and heard inside the steady, unhurried breathing of a horse, heavy, sure. Orion was there. My heart thumped so loud I feared the one holding him would hear. I drew in a breath, and the smell that poured out scorched my memory, burnt kerosene, an old soldier's coat, the tannic sting of leather saddle. I knew that odor. It followed Rowan till the last day he worked the ranch. Father called him traitor, but no one said the word crime. We buried it deeper, as if silence were enough. I pushed the door with my palm. It creaked, the sound slicing my spine like a rusted pin. Inside, the lamp burned a greedy flame, throwing thick shadows across the brown floor. Orion stood at the far wall, tied by a plain rope. His eyes shone like molten tin, he pawed nervously but did not fight. Between him and me, turning at the noise, rose a man whose face looked carved by a joiner, chopped cheekbones, dense shadow of stubble. Rowan. He held a curved farrier's bar, yet raised it not as a weapon, but as an anchor buried in the past. Don't make any sudden moves, he said softly, without threat, as if we met at a funeral. Step away from him, I barely kept my voice on one note. Beside him, just behind, a rustle sounded. Lauren stepped from the shadow. Hair tangled, eyes dark with sleeplessness, a silver pendant of a galloping horse on her neck, the twin of mine, which lay at home on the dresser, rusted from forgotten tears. Clara, she whispered. That alone snapped a string in my chest, pain flooded without warning. I moved toward her, and Rowan set the bar across, like a line. Another man's debt is being settled here, he said. Another's? You speak of our father and act like you were family. My words leapt louder than I meant. Orion threw up his head, gulped air with a hollow thud. Lauren touched Rowan's shoulder, and he lowered the bar to the floor. His fingers trembled, not from fear, more from strain, as if a man holds back a curtain ready to rip free. "Tell her," Lauren murmured. "You promised you'd tell." He inhaled deep, as if smoke stuck in his lungs. "Your father owed, Clara. Not money. He traded water. The oceanic horizon under these fields, the aquifer older than the state itself. Half the county sits on it. He made a deal, access only to those who signed a conservation code. I was the go-between. Then came men who wanted no code, only profit. Father refused. So they demanded collateral." He nodded at Orion. "A guide horse. A living key to the well." His words fell like a wet sail. I heard my blood drumming in my ears, and with that drum resurfaced the evening Dad came back from town, grey as road dust, stroking the horses long without a word. "You worked for those men." My voice broke into a whisper. "I thought I was protecting the ranch. Thought I could stand on both sides. When I learned the price, it was too late. Your father drove me out, but he didn't end the contract, just moved it into secrecy," Rowan swallowed. "And I left to search another way." Lauren lifted her eyes, the lamp flame danced in her pupils. "Dad gave me a letter," she said. "There are coordinates and a code. He wrote, 'Girls, in the needed hour trust the one who looks forward, not back, and the horse that feels deeper than water.' Why did you disappear?" The words tore out. "Because your rage is worse than the desert," Lauren answered. "I knew you wouldn't believe until you saw with your own eyes what feel do for that water." Metal clicked in the doorway. I turned, and my heart crashed. A man in a black raincoat stood there, automatic shotgun pointed at the floor, but the safety off. Two more behind him. The lamp guttered in a draft, their faces jumped in the dance of shadows. I recognized the belt buckle stamped with the oil gas company Black Prairie Resources, the same squeezing farmers all last year, buying up land. The tall one, jaw shaved to blue, spoke with lazy politeness, "Good evening. Seems you're all here. Hand us the horse and the envelope and we leave. The land stays yours, if you still believe in that myth called honesty." Orion snorted like a drum roll. Rowan slid nearer him, half a meter, like armor. Two thoughts struck me at once. I was unarmed, and I would not give them the horse. I saw Lauren's fingers brush the pendant, felt something else under it, a tiny silver key on the chain. "Leave," I said. "This tract is under federal moratorium." "Was," the leader smirked. "Your father's dead, the paper void. We file the easement in the morning. Now we simply collect the collateral." He stepped closer, shotgun rising. And in that instant something clicked in Orion. He lunged, snapping the rope as if it were cobweb. He reared, hindquarters swinging, front hooves crashed onto the old table, boards exploded like matches. The lamp flame died, darkness collapsed, yet a quick moon flash slashed through a broken window. In that strobe I saw the barrel jerk upward. "Down!" Rowan shouted. The shot ripped boards, splinters sprayed. Orion wheeled as if walls were an open arena, his hind legs smashed the nearest thug into the stove, air hissing from the man's lungs. I dived aside, my elbow biting the floor. Lauren slid behind the counter, yanked the lamp, oil gushed fire across the planks, catching in yellow tongues. Boards roared, the air moaned with heat. "Clara!" Rowan's voice from the far side of flame. Out the window. Orion was already lunging for the opening, hooves sparking in dust. Lauren ran to him, grabbed his menore. He understood, crouched low so she could mount. I scrambled after. Behind us boot thumps and the clack of a reload mingled with the crack of burning beams. We leapt almost together, fire licking our heels. The ground met us hard. I rolled, looked up, smoke billowed in the doorway, figures cursing, choking on fumes. Up! Rowan boosted me behind Lauren. Orion reared. I caught my sister's belt. A bullet ripped the air, punched a pine trunk, wood roared. Orion bolted into gallop, muscles springing beneath us, as if we flew above the earth. The forest split before us, branches whipped my face, but fear melted into liquid flame of resolve. Rowan ran alongside, astonishingly fast, overtaking us along the S-shaped trail, showing the way. 2 more shots crashed behind, buckshot ripped the bark, showering us with dry dust. We burst onto a clearing where the moon once more became a hammer of light. There, in the very center, yawned a dark pit, an abandoned well once sealed with a concrete slab. The slab had been shifted aside. Lauren tore off her pendant, felt for the key, slid it into a narrow slot beneath the concrete rim. She turned it, click went a hidden lock, and with a muffled sigh the slab sank deeper, opening the blackness. Cold, moist freshness wafted up somewhere below, water sang like a choir of glass pipes. Only this way they can take the source, Lauren said, gulping air. Well, cap the shaft later, right now they need the code. Rowan caught up, dropped to his knees at the edge, pulled from his pocket a small cylinder, like an old plunger. He held it to the aperture. I thought I glimpsed a prayer flash in his eyes. "I'll redeem what stained my name," he whispered. Behind us another shot cracked. The slug pinged into the night. The Black Prairie men burst onto the clearing, but Orion already stood chest on to them, blocking their view. He struck the ground with a hoof, as though counting, 1, 2, 3. Lauren lifted father's letter to her breast, the paper shed hidden all this time. "Tell them," she shouted to Rowan. He rose, facing the men in black slickers. "The source is sealed already. Without the code the shaft is mute. Burn the land if you like, the water will dive deeper. You will never find it." The leader raised his gun, but in that instant Orion lunged. I cried out, yet he stopped a yard from the muzzle. His hooves flung earth in the man's face. Instinctively the stranger shielded himself, finger jerking the trigger, the bullet flying high into the sky. A brief pause, like tightening a bleeding wound. The man grasped that one more shot would kill the rider, yet the horse would split his chest. "Your choice," I said, feeling the ashes of fear stir. "We stand on ground older than all your papers. Try to seize it, and water will lie on your tongue as salt." The leader's gaze twitched. He knew we were ready to go the whole way. "We're leaving," he barked to his partners. But this story isn't over. The shadows melted into the forest, slipping away as softly as they had come. Orion lowered his head, breathing hard, nostrils quivering. The moon slid behind a cloud and it became darker than ever. I dismounted, wrapped my arms round his neck, his coarse coat soaked with sweat yet smelling of home. Lauren stood beside me, her shoulder brushed mine, and I didn't draw back. Rowan breathed in stutters, one hand resting on the concrete lid now covering the well again. "There's nothing left for them to take except," he lifted his eyes, and for the first time they held no guilt. Except fear. We stood on the edge of the clearing, the ashes of the burned cabin smoking on the horizon like a black beacon. The world wasn't lighter, on the contrary, the hum of an unspoken future vibrated in the night. Yet the bond they'd tried to sever with money and threats had held, like the hide beneath a horse's hooves when it carries both sisters at once. In the silence that settled I heard the low drone of water rising from the shaft, as though the earth was reclaiming whatever had betrayed her. Orion nickered softly, and this time the sound was not a warning but a promise. The story would keep going, and we would meet it together. The light of the morning star flared in a thin strip in the east when we returned to Blue Canyon. The wind still smelled of char, the cabin smoldered far back in the woods, and smoke crawled over the plain like the ghost of someone else's guilt. But in the barnyard another silence reigned. A silence in which every board, every stone seemed to ask whether they would withstand the new story that had just been born. Orion, tired, covered with road dust and beads of sweat, found the way to his stall by himself. I removed the bridle and examined his neck, small swollen stripes where the rope had rubbed the skin. Nothing serious, yet my hand shook when I smeared the abrasion with iodine salve. Lauren handed me clean water, almost shyly, the way she used to offer her first drawings. We needed a lot of water. Orion drank, holding each gulp, as though listening to the liquid strike his throat, assuring himself that he was still alive. Rowan stood by the gate, forehead pressed to the cold iron. His shoulders trembled as if the recoil of the shots still lodged between his shoulder blades. When I approached, he did not turn. "Too many dead doors on my account," he said hoarsely. "Better late to keep them open than never," I answered, and in my own voice I heard a crack, a fissure through which compassion seeped inside. Lauren went into the house and returned a minute later, holding Father's letter, already torn at the folds. Only now did I see, the envelope was double, like a hiding place within a hiding place. Inside lay another sheet, folded into a tight square. The three of us sat on the porch steps, faces toward the grey embryo of day. Orion stood beside us, quietly chewing oats like a sentry. Lauren unfolded the sheet. The paper was thinner, almost parchment. The ink, thick, uneven. "My daughters, if you are reading this, it means the bargains of the old world have caught up with you. Remember, water is not a commodity as long as it is shared. The code to the shaft is not in numbers. The code is in trust. Only two bloods can open the threshold, the one that stayed to guard the land and the one that left seeking forgiveness. Orion knows their step. Do not give away what can be shared, or they will divide you." Beneath the signature a blot lay uneven, as though Father had stopped, unfinished thought in hand. I placed my fingers on that blot, as if I could feel the tempo of his heart. "Two bloods," I whispered. "You and me," Lauren nodded. He knew only together we could decide the shaft's fate. Rowan lifted his head. "Black Prairie won't leave. Tomorrow in county court is the hearing on the easement. If they prove the source ownerless, it'll be deemed a mineral without proprietor. So we have less than a day," I said. Inside rose the familiar steel note that appears when you ride at a barrier and know you can't fall. We managed to intercept Sheriff Harwell at 5:30. He was just raising the flag at the station. Seeing Orion powdered with soot, the sheriff frowned. "Looks like the night went well. Who was shooting on private land?" On the kitchen table of the office we laid out the letter, the piece of the bit, Lauren's silver key, and the cap of the canister stamped Black Prairie. Harwell listened in silence when we finished. He ran a hand over his face as though wiping off fatigue. "Paper's thin. Court will need a physical code or a map of the bore." "The code is us," Lauren explained, her voice trembling. "The geological register is in Father's safe. We couldn't open it." The sheriff shook his head. "Give me the combination key, I'll bring an expert. But if Black Prairie posts armed guards, one warrant won't cover it. We'd need a federal inspector's authority, and that takes weeks to summon." Silence stretched, pressing on our temples. Then Rowan slammed a chair upright. "I'll go to Bismarck. The drilling license register for Black Prairie is kept there. I'll make copies that prove they exceed quotas. That should be enough for the judge to suspend the easement." Harwell measured his gaze. "They'll name you an accomplice. Let them. I want to come back a man, not just a signature in their protocol." The words sounded so simple, as if asking heaven for rain. The sheriff extended his hand. Rowan shook it. Everything was decided. By sunset Lauren and I were standing at the fence, where the grass hissed finely under the dry wind. Orion roamed freely between the posts, stopping beside us, as if checking whether we were still there. I was afraid I'd never hear him snort again, Lauren said. Afraid you would turn away. I touched her elbow. I turned away long ago. But you still came back. That means the road isn't closed. We fell silent, listening to how each word echoed in the evening air. Remember, she began, how Mom used to say, a horse keeps its heart on the outside, a person keeps it inside, that's why we need each other. I remember. I stroked Orion's withers. So we only had to bring the heart outside to see each other's. Lauren smiled, strained, as though her face still wasn't used to the motion. In the pocket of her jacket a paper rustled, Father's letter. She unfolded it again, and in the lantern light a dark vein of ink seeped through. A line we had missed, hidden under the blot was a stroke, and if a night stronger than fire comes, look for my sign on the water. A sign on the water. I whispered. Dad had an old map of the irrigation canals. He said he hid a signature cipher on the staff gauge. If we find it, the court will take it as engineering evidence. We rushed to the office. In a cupboard clamped by 2 rusty locks were rolls of blueprints. We unrolled them one after another until dust started to taste bitter in the mouth. And we found it, old militarized paper with ultramarine lines, the Canal System Plan of 1957. In the lower right corner the table of level marks. At 31.7 feet a tiny stamp, an engraved silhouette of a galloping horse, the same as on the pendant. Station Dandiel. I recognized the name. Now there's only a concrete arch and a sensor. If we pull the plate, we'll find Dad's signature. The dog Daisy suddenly barked on the porch. Headlights of a jeep flashed between the buildings. Rowan climbed out, returned quicker than we expected. In his hands, a plastic case with the crest of the Department of Natural Resources. Got everything, satellite images of leaks, copies of their violations. In the morning we'll file for suspension of the easement, he said and smiled grimly. I sighed, more to be sure my lungs still obeyed. The road to tomorrow became visible, we'd have to walk it without fear. We fed Orion fresh hay when velvet stars thickened over the plain. But the sky seemed restless to me, too many dark patches along the horizon, as if the earth itself raised a barrier. I was closing the gate when Lauren murmured, think they'll come back tonight? Surely. I patted the cold metal of the bar. But now the water speaks for us. And she likes silence to be heard. We set lanterns along the perimeter. The sound of footsteps carried far. Any stranger stepping onto the yard would swing the light like a bell. In the barn I laid bedding right by the stall. First time in years I chose to sleep beside the horse. Lauren sat opposite, back to the wall. Between us the lamp drew a triangle of light in which Orion shifted quietly, dozing on his feet. We talk as if we've already won, my sister whispered. Victory is an earthly matter, I answered, feeling my eyes stick together. We need truth. It's deeper than water. I closed my eyes and thought I heard, from beneath the floor, perhaps from the ground itself, a faint hum like distant purring. Voices of the earth. They don't speak in words, yet they give a sense, if you stay faithful, they will rise as a wall. That night I fell asleep with a strange certainty, everything ahead, court, debt, danger, had already shrunk to the size of a known trail. We would walk it, 3 of us, Lauren, Orion, and I. And behind every step would be water, hidden under thousands of feet yet listening to our talk. Midnight stretched like a string, and we caught each of its trembling sounds with our skin. Guard lanterns traced arcs along the perimeter, moths swirled in halos of light, as though they themselves were sparks of our attention. The wind, warm, insistent, carried the scent of a near storm front, ozone and far thunder, not yet cracking, but promising the rending of heaven's seams. Orion, loosely tied at the shed, jerked his head up. Nostrils twitched. He snorted once, twice, no longer a question but a warning. Lauren caught my gaze. It's starting. Headlights crawled in from the eastern field, muffled, barely glowing like twin fireflies, but we were used to darkness, and saw them clearly. Black Prairie came with no emblems, no formalities. 3 SUVs, beds covered with tarps. The people moved slow, feline. They counted on the thunder as their ally, on the creak of dry grass drowning in the rumble of the sky rolling closer. From the hill Randy Douglas flashed the signal, 2 quick beams of a hand spot. The farmers on guard lifted their rifles, but Howell told them not to shoot until the intruders crossed the fence, otherwise the judge would turn the guns against us. We could all hear our teeth knock together and knew, once rain burst through the clouds, tracks would vanish with the evidence. Then Orion tore the lead rope free, left it swinging like an empty halter, and galloped into the dark, not toward the gate, but to the far corner of the pasture, where the gully began. I understood, he was leading us. Beneath that sod ran the old drain pipe, a straight corridor to the concrete lid of the well. The 3 of us, Lauren, Rowan, and I, ran after him. Gravel crunch under our boots pulled the strangers out of stealth. 2 men moved to cut us off, but from the brush our neighbor Henry the Hunter rose, whistled, and the pump-action slide snapped in answer, "Past me, if you dare." The strangers recoiled, buying us a minute worth a lifetime. Orion stopped at the shaft lid, striking the ground as if trying to punch through to the heart of the concrete. At that moment the cloud split. The first lightning stroke hurled a flash that lit the field like noon. We saw the slickered figures running in line. We also saw something else, moisture oozing thick along the rim. Pressure in the aquifer was rising, years of drought, Black Prairie's pumps, the earth was answering. Valves giving. Lauren shouted, pressing her pendant tag to the socket. The indicator blinked green. The concrete jerked, as if metal lungs tried to inhale. Help! I braced a shoulder while Rowan grabbed the other handle. Rain lashed down, round drops beating the slab, washing months of dust away. The lid shifted, hissing, and inside I heard a roar as though water were boiling. A shot cracked behind. The bullet sang and shattered the ceramic level marker beside the shaft. The 3 of us flattened against the concrete rim. Voices of Black Prairie grew closer, yet thunder drowned the words. Rowan rose first, empty hands raised as though holding air. "Step closer and the lid will blow, pressure will tear you apart," he yelled through the storm. "We don't control the flow." The leader advanced, pistol held low. "Let it blow. We need rights, not water. And rights don't ask the dead." He lifted the gun, and Orion, as if hearing a verdict, lunged forward. His hindquarters rammed the weapon. The pistol spun away. In the same second the valve clicked, the concrete disc lifted, and from the widening crack burst a jet, first steam, then water, warm and powerful as a forger's breath. It struck the leader full in the chest, flung him on his back, spattered mud sky high. The next lightning bolt tore the drum of heaven, turning the field to a mirror of silver. The torrent swelled, roared, shot in a fountain above our heads. It fell on grass, swallowed dust, flooded the invaders' boots, cutting off retreat. The grips of their flashlights sparked and died, electricity capitulated to the element. Someone screamed to the short dike, men in slickers ran, sinking in clay like bread soaked in brine. Sheriff Howell's squad reached the clearing from the far side, barrels kept low, but now the weapon was the ground itself. It lifted its bowl and poured without pause. Rain fused with shaft water, dust turned into letters of a sentence readable even in darkness: "This water is free." The Black Prairie chief, limp from blow and flow, raised his eyes. Water streamed over his face, mixing fear with the fuel sheen of his coat. He grasped that head lost not papers, but time, years while greed dried the county. He knelt, groping for the pistol, but a hoof was there first, Orion pressed the gun into mud with a gentle weight. By dawn a mirror lake lay on the field. Water slowly drained to natural hollows, leaving the smell of wet wheat and the hum of a satisfied earth. We stood on the hill, Harwell, neighbors, Rowan, Lauren, and I, watching the sun climb the ridge, painting the improvised reservoir honey amber. The county prosecutor arrived with a federal water resources inspector. The downpour had washed away bureaucracy, leaving a factual baptismal act. The inspector dipped a sampler. The water showed 8 parts per million in salts, clean, alive. Your father set a double valve, he said, studying the diagram. At critical pressure the well opens automatically to save the layer from cavitation. He trusted safety to the force of the water itself. I smiled, feeling a little paper boat of pride unfold somewhere in my chest. Black Prairie were led away under guard. Their leader now faced not only armed trespass charges, but an emissions probe. As he passed he muttered, "Water is the oil of the future. You won't hold the future." "We're not here to hold," I replied. "We're here to share." That very day the farmers met in Father's old hangar, and unanimously founded the Upper Plateau Cooperative, a community trust where each family put in land or labor. Harwell signed first, the inspector sealed it as federal overseer. Lauren and I left the signature plate not in a safe, but by the office door for all to see, memory etched in metal. Rowan, his arm in a sling, head dislocated, a shoulder hauling the lid, said he was volunteering for a well cleanup program. We knew he was returning to the world of debtors, but with the right to say, "I've paid." That evening, when heat steamed the last puddles away, I walked Orion up the hill. Lauren brought 2 mugs of corn coffee. We sat on the rail. A gentle wind flapped the flag atop the barn. It breathed again, like an old accordion without cracks. "Did it hurt, being angry?" she asked softly. "It hurt believing anger was all that was left," I answered. We laughed shortly, through the lump in our throats. Orion turned his head, laid his chin on my shoulder, and Lauren set her warm palm on his neck. 3 pulses matched, the horse's, hers, and mine. In those beats I suddenly heard a distant echo from the shaft, a murmur, as though the well sang Father's song. They understood. Across the plain a light ringing rose, the same small bell on the gate. This time the bell was rung by the wind of the future, not a stranger's threat. It rang clear, pure. "Hear that?" Lauren whispered. "Voices of the earth," I said. "They are on our side now." We watched the sun sink into orange carpets of wheat. A light ripple ran through the heads, as if the water itself was learning how to walk the land. And I knew, a story is longer than any chapter. But on the page where you write the word end, there must be a signature. We too, once lost to each other, and the horse that guarded our way, we were that signature. The kind no one will erase.